time for the Mid-Year Freakout book tag. Welcome to another video. I'm Beth, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book tag for the second time. That's right, I have been on YouTube for 1 year as of last month. It's my second time doing this tag. Comment below with your answers so I can hear how your reading year is going so far. Question number 1. What is the best book that you've read so far this year? This answer was pretty easy, and that is The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. I really love this book. It's a new favorite, and it feels like it belongs in the time of Jane Austen. So much so, someone could have chucked it into a TARDIS or a time machine, and I wouldn't have doubted that it was something that she wrote. In this retelling, we're following the perspective of Mary, who is not like her witty or beautiful older sisters or her impulsive and vain younger sisters. She's kind of introverted, she loves to play the piano, she loves to read, and she's a little bit self-sacrificing, not to the extent where people love her for it, but just for the sake of her feeling like she is a martyr. So she's got a lot of growth ahead of her as a character, and you can see that her surroundings with her family the way they are, and the prospect of her being alone with her mother, who we all know from Pride and Prejudice is not the best character to emanate.
Mr. Bingley? Oh my goodness! Everybody behave naturally.
There is potential for her to grow and bloom as a character, but she needs to be in a different environment, and so that's what happens in this story. And the arc that her character goes on is amazing, and I loved it. If you're having a little bit of a Bridgerton hangover at the moment, or you just are sad that there are no more Jane Austen books to read, I think it's going to fill that void for you, and it also is a little bit more of a sweet and wholesome romance. So I like it even better. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read this year so far? This answer might surprise you because I did just finish the amazingly long and majestic Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. It was very emotional. I loved it. However, that's not gonna be my pick. My selection for best sequel would actually be A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. This is the follow-up to the book A River Enchanted. This duology is set a sort of Celtic-inspired world where we have two sides of an island that are divided by a river, and there are like warring factions. There's a lot of misunderstanding at play, but then we also have the added underlevel of these spirits who are at odds with one another, and it's messing with the weather, it's messing with nature, and people's health is at stake. I was previously unconvinced that 2 books was enough to pull off what Rebecca Ross did in this duology, and I was really impressed. My pick for this one would be A Fire Endless. Question number 3, are you ready for this? This is the new release that's been sitting on your bookshelf and you can't wait to read it, but you just haven't read it yet. What's your most anticipated release that you haven't yet read? My answer for this one is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. It has elements of Sherlock Holmes and Watson, which I love. Sherlock Holmes is one of my favorite characters in literature, but it's set in a fantasy world where the elements are kind of out of control. There are sea monsters, there are mushrooms that are taking over. I'm not 100% sure everything that's going on, but I've heard that the world building is amazing. And this is the first book in the series, The Shadow of the Leviathans. I'm excited to give it a read and see if those Sherlock Holmes elements really do play well with the kind of monsters, weather disasters, and nature horror? I don't know. Number 4, what is the most anticipated release that's coming in the next 6 months? Last half of the year, what books are going to be coming out that you're excited to read? The 2 that I'm excited for are The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop and Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. These are two very different books, right? We have a memoir from the actress most famous for her role as the grandmother in Gilmore Girls, and I'm very excited to read from her perspective because she isn't the most no, that's not a word. She hasn't really published anything so far that I'm aware of, so I'm excited to read from her. I also know that she has a whole entire career outside of that show, and I'm eager to learn more about how she developed as an actress and her experience in Hollywood, which would have been a little bit before Lauren Graham and Alexis Bledel had entered that scene. I think I'm probably going to listen to the audiobook. I just love memoirs in the author's own voice. That's one that I'm definitely excited for, and the release date is going to be right up here for you. The next one is coming out in November, and that is Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This is going to be the follow-up to What the River Knows, and this is a duology, so we're going to have everything wrapped up in the second volume. I think that this is going to be a really good follow-up. In the first book, we were introduced to main character Inez, whose parents disappeared while they were on an archaeological expedition in Egypt. And Inez suspects that there's more to their deaths than it appears, and so she goes herself. She really wanted to be alongside her parents as they were exploring different countries and learning about the history there. However, they've kind of excluded that side of their life from her, and she's only seen them just for short visits. So when she finally gets to enter this country that she has never been to before and interact with people that she's only heard about in third person, she starts to put some pieces together for herself as to what she's missed out on as a child, as well as this other world of deception and intrigue and treasure that exists. And of course, because it's a romantasy, she was also introduced to a cocky but lovable male character, and they really hit it off in book one. There's a little bit of a twist at the end of book one, both regards to the main storyline of the mystery and the romance. So there's a lot of loose threads that Isabella is going to have to pull together in book two. Honestly, I can't wait. Number 5 is what book has been your biggest disappointment so far this year? You pre-ordered it or you picked it for book of the month. You borrowed it from your library months in advance, and when you opened it and you read the first chapter, something inside of you died. Okay, that's too dramatic. But this was the biggest disappointment. My answer is How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. I was so hyped up for this one. I've heard the author was signed on to write the screenplays for a couple of Emily Henry's upcoming book-to-screen adaptations, and because I really love Emily Henry and her characters, I was excited to see a little bit from who the screenwriter was. But this story fell flat for me. The way that it was constructed just didn't quite make sense. It was the type of story where we have an element of grief, we have a component of misunderstanding, but then the grief is so tied into the misunderstanding that it really would take an awful lot of conversation and resolution, I think, for our two main characters to even consider romance. Their physical attraction and their banter somehow was portrayed to overcome all of that, and that did not sit well with me. There are other authors who handle those types of emotional growth before a relationship or within a relationship a lot better than this book did, and they might just be showing up on my list in a little bit. So just stay tuned for that. Number 6 is The Biggest Surprise. What book was so good it surprised you? My answer, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. Our main character, Ernest, knows all the rules to writing a good mystery story, and at the very beginning of this book, he lets us know that he's going to do his best to follow those rules, with some exceptions, and he's very precise about where we're going to see things, like where we're going to have some grisly scenes, where we're going to see that the main character lied, etc. The circumstances of this story are a family retreat up in the mountains at a ski lodge where they all get snowed in. A body is discovered, the police are called to the scene to investigate. Suspects are interviewed, and things become more complicated. There are other deaths and intrigue that start to happen, and it just feels so much like an Agatha Christie story, but a highly caffeinated Agatha Christie story. This book is so funny. The setting is amazing, the dialogue is incredible, and just the tongue-in-cheek humor about the classic age of detectives. All of the modern references also that make it rooted into present day are also so satisfying. The fact that our storyteller published ebooks about how to write your own mystery story, but he's never actually written his own book, I just love that. It was so fun. This book surprised me because it has just been so popular and so widely talked about on YouTube. Most of the readers I've seen, they've either loved it or they really didn't like it, and I loved it. That surprised me, and I highly recommend you give it a try and see if it works for you. Number 7 is, who is a recent favorite author? In the last 6 months, I've read quite a lot of romance, which is kind of out of the ordinary for me, but I really just needed something to relax, and I wanted something funny, but maybe a little bit emotional. And I found that in Abby Jimenez. She constructs some really funny characters that have some very real life problems, and the way that they discuss those issues with one another and grow, I think, is what makes those books so heartfelt. Even if I don't love all of the romance content of the book, I really like the way that she handled some of the deeper issues, and the layer of, you know, lighthearted humor over top of that, I think, makes it just the perfect little cup of hot cocoa. I haven't read all of her backlist. I've just read her most 3 recent novels, but I would say she's already an auto-buy author for me. Number 8, this is the question that I wonder if she'd be subbed for something new at this point. Who is your newest fictional crush? The only one that sprung to mind for me was perhaps Roman from Divine Rivals. Even though I don't love his character throughout, the idea of having a significant other that leaves you notes, expresses their love for you through letters, is always going to be a timeless appeal to me, and so I put Roman for this one. Number 9 is your new favorite character. My answer is Ernest from Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. I like that he doesn't really have everything together in life. He has had some setbacks in relationship and his family dynamics and his career thus far, so he's still trying to kind of get back on his feet. Our author, by the way, for these books is a stand-up comedian, and I think that that voice comes through super well through his main character voice, so that is my favorite character. Number 10 is, what book made you cry? It was Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. I sobbed at the end of that book, and I think it was partially because of the ending of the book and how sad it was, but also because it was the end of this long series and I was saying goodbye to so many characters that I had grown to love, and also I was closing the door on that world that I had gotten acquainted with, and it was just very sad. Do you cry over fictional characters? I guess my answer would be yes. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing. Art enables us to respond to the emotions that are already being held within us, and that is something that only an amazing author, an amazing artist is able to unlock in us as readers. And I think that Robin Hobb has that unique gift. Number 11, a book that made you happy. I laughed out loud so much reading Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. It's just got a lot of kind of off-the-wall things that happened. I had to read passages out loud to my husband Jeff because they were so funny. So my answer for this one is 100% Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful new book that you've added to your shelf? And my answer to this one is Olivetti by Ali Millington. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, but we are just talking about covers only at the moment, so I think that's okay. It's quite possible you've never spoken to a typewriter before. This is not your fault. Humans tend to think we can't understand them, but when you sit still for long enough, there is much you can learn. I pre-ordered this one and it came with a cute little postcard bookmark, The inside is this bright orange. This year I feel like I'm really drawn to cover design that has some orange in it for some reason. The author bio and portrait is sideways in this book. That's something that you don't see very often. Usually they're only vertical, but they designed it to be horizontal. And the chapter headings are in a, of course, typewriter-like font. I haven't had a chance to read this one yet, but my mother-in-law borrowed it and she loved it. I know it's going to be a quick read. It's a middle grade. It's something that you could probably read in one day. So I'm kind of saving it for a rainy day at the moment, but this is my prettiest new book. Question number 13. What are the books that you have to read before the end of the year? My first answer for this would be anything that's on my 24 in 2024 TBR, which I set in this video. So I think I'm halfway done with that TBR and I'm still working my way through it. It's been going really well. I have been discovering some gems for sure. Two that come to mind are Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith, which I had not read yet, and then rereading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. After finishing both of those, I decided that I needed to get the author's backlists, which are just a few books, and so I've been tracking those down on Pango Books. I might do a video where I read those as well and let you know how they stack up to their most famous works. That's something that could happen in the future. So anything that's on my goal TBR. And then in addition to that, I have a couple books that I really want to get to before the end of the year. They're both part of series. One is the book 2 and another one is book 1. So book 2 is The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. And this is the follow-up to The Book That Wouldn't Burn, which was my second favorite book last year. I've heard that Mark was really nice on us in this book, and he kind of provides a little bit of a segue, a little bit of a catch-up at the beginning of this one, so I don't necessarily need to flip through book 1, but I do want to give it a read so that I'm ready for the release of book 3. We don't have too long to wait because he did write all of them already. They just haven't been published yet. The Book That Broke the World. The other one that I'm really eager to get to, I just picked up last week, and that is Empire Silence by Christopher Riocchio. The reason I'm so excited to give this a try is because Tori Morrow had recently finished The Will of the Many by James Islington and this book, and she said both of them were very, very good. I know they're very different as far as subject matter, world building, all of that. However, because she had them both listed as two things that were new favorites, I was really eager to give this one a try, so I'll let you know what I think, and it does have other volumes to read next. So I won't be waiting on it quite as long as The Strength of a Few, which is the follow-up to The Will of the Many. We've made it to our last question, question number 14. Who are some content creators you've been loving lately? And I have two recommendations for you. My first one is another booktube channel, and that is Sid Bookworm. Sydney makes some really fun spin the bottle TBR videos where she gives herself penalties and rewards based on the books that she was able to get through the previous month. And I always enjoy watching those and seeing what kind of stack she's going to build for that month. But she also recently started making short form content, weekend recap of what she read over the weekend and what she's going to be reading during the week. And I just think that that's a really great way to do short form content. I've enjoyed her ideas and the way that she has introduced those, and her community is also just so fun. My other recommendation is not a booktube channel, but that is Indoor Cat. She does some really amazing vlog style content about enjoying the good stuff about your 30s and living in New York City, both the pros and cons of that, and her editing and her music selection, even like the color grading of her videos is just so cozy and nostalgic for me. I love classic film, and I feel like that comes through in the way that she puts together videos. She doesn't have that many videos up, but you can tell that she's been putting her heart into them. If you haven't commented yet and you only want to answer one question that was in this video, here's the one that I would love to hear from you. One author that you tried this year and now you're really excited to read basically whatever else they've written. Comment below with your answer, and If you still don't know what to comment, find an emoji that makes you think of this cover. Thanks for joining me for another one of these mid-year book tags. If you want to watch my video from last year to compare your notes, I will have it linked here. If you'd like to stick around for more videos like this, subscribe. And if you just sit tight, I'm sure YouTube is going to recommend a video just for you. I'm so excited to see what the next 6 months of reading holds for all of us, and I hope to see you in another video soon.